and the military strongman Khalifa Haftar both committed to a conditional ceasefire and to elections as soon as possible, maybe as soon as next spring. Do you think that this is maybe finally a watershed for Libya?
It's certainly an important juncture, the degree of understanding and agreement between two major players on the Libyan theater is certainly a positive step in the right direction. This is a continuation of a long-standing dialogue that has been underway and that has been shepherded by many countries, both regionally and internationally, and it does open the door for increased building of confidence and dialogue between the various political entities in Libya.
Right. Obviously, Mr. Sarraj is considered very weak. He barely controls Tripoli, the capital, whereas Mr. Haftar has been making gains militarily. Do you think that this was the reason why the progress of Mr. Haftar, who has been supported by a number of countries, starting with Egypt?
I wouldn't characterize the position of Mr. Sarraj as being weak. Mr. Sarraj is designated and recognized by the international community, by the Security Council as head of the Presidential Council and Prime Minister of the National Unity Government. On the other hand, the gains that Field Marshal Haftar has been able to achieve has been to rid Benghazi of terrorist elements and to continue to restrict the movement and the expansion of terrorist organizations on Libyan soil. He plays an important role as the head of the National Libyan Army and has demonstrated a degree of responsibility and willingness to engage in a political dialogue for the security and stability of Libya.
But he has been supported, including militarily, by the United Arab Emirates, Egypt. The fact that he is being welcomed by Western heads of state obviously gives him not only military legitimacy, but also political, and this is maybe the biggest change that occurred this week in Paris. Do you agree with that?
Well, Egypt has always advocated that the Libyan National Army is a very important component
but not everyone shared your views, obviously,
well,
including here.
I think there has been a degree of understanding and recognition of the logic that we had presented and the demonstration of a responsible action on the part of the Field Marshal. In the final context, it is the responsibility of the Libyan National Army to regain security, to battle terrorism, and we believe they must be accorded the tools and the capacity to do so.
But are you optimistic that elections can be organized in less than a year, given, first of all, the antagonism? And we know there are many militias, there are many different groups in Libya. It seems really like wishful thinking.
Well, for the past year, Egypt has been undertaking a very wide-ranging dialogue with many Libyan political participants. We have built a reasonable degree of confidence among many. We have open channels of communications to important Libyan participants in the West, and we continue to consolidate.
You're confident they will join this process?
I can say that we are hopeful, and we will continue to work on introducing and extracting the support of all of the Libyan national entities to the framework for the way forward. And that way forward is not only a matter of elections, but it is a matter, as stipulated in the Sukharat Agreement, of constitutional amendment, of issuing a law that would regulate the electoral process. And there is a role for both the legislative bodies, whether it's the House of Representatives or the State Council, to undertake those responsibilities, and for the elected officials to also contribute to the consensus building inside of Libya.
I want to get to the crisis in Jerusalem. The Al-Aqsa Mosque compound has been yet again, I would say, the focus of lots of tensions. Israel installed metal detectors after 2 Israeli policemen were killed. This provoked more violence and uproar in the Muslim world. Israel removed those metal detectors, but there are still security measures in place that the local Muslim authorities refuse to accept, and they say they would not go back. Do you think Israel needs to step an additional step back to really diffuse this situation?
Well, Egypt has encouraged all sides to refrain from taking any actions that can escalate the tensions, that can lead to a cycle of violence and continued strife.
Does this mean you're also asking the Muslim authorities to show some flexibility?
We are following closely the discussions that are being shepherded by Jordan, and we believe because of their special responsibilities towards the Holy Shrine and in the Masjid al-Aqsa, that we are hopeful that the situation will return to what was previously the case. So the issue of Jerusalem is a very volatile, very emotional one, very dear to the hearts of Muslims around the world. And it is certainly the rise of tensions and conflict will not be a benevolent factor.
Could it lead to a third intifada if things don't quiet down?
I think it is better for us to concentrate on descaling this conflict and reducing the tensions. That is the important point at this juncture, the one that we should all work for. I think the Israeli government must address these issues in relation to rights and the emotional attachment of Muslims to the Masjid al-Aqsa, and that no unilateral actions should be taken that aggravate the situation.
I want to get to the situation in Gaza. Mohammed Dakhlan, who was a former security chief in the area, who is now in exile, is negotiating with Hamas. Hamas has been at odds with Egypt for a long time to find a new agreement for Gaza. And he recently said in an interview with the Associated Press that the Rafah checkpoint between Egypt and Gaza would be reopened fully at the end of Egypt. Do you think this could indeed happen, and that this could open maybe a new era between Egypt and Hamas?
Well, it is always important to address the humanitarian needs of the Palestinian people in Gaza. What happens related to the crossing is contingent on the security conditions in Egypt and the area of the northeastern portion of the Sinai, where there is active terrorist operations. It is contingent also on maintaining the overall security of Egypt and its national interests in the region, and on the application of the agreement of 2005 related to the opening of the crossings, related to the responsibilities of the Palestinian Authority in that regard.
But you agree with this negotiation? Egypt, it's taking place in Cairo, so Egypt endorses this as a possible solution.
We are always supportive of
not always
policies.
Of discussions with Hamas.
We are always supportive of policies that leads to relaxation of tensions, a greater understanding, the national unity of the Palestinian representatives and the responsibilities of the Palestinian Authority in the conduct of the affairs of the Palestinian people. Again, these issues are related to not only the situation in Gaza and the humanitarian conditions, but also to Egyptian national security interests and the obligations, legal obligations on Hamas and others in respect to the 2005 agreement, shepherded by the European Union as well.
I just want to get very quickly to the crisis in the Gulf with Qatar. There seems to be no solution in sight. You and the other countries have added new names to a so-called blacklist. Do you see any possibility? The Kuwaiti mediation seems to be going nowhere. Are you pessimistic that a solution can be found soon?
I believe that the whole issue rests squarely on the shoulders of the Qatari government.
You're not willing to show any flexibility?
It's not a matter of flexibility, nor is it a matter of negotiations. We do not negotiate on the martyrdom of our security services and
But Qatar is not responsible for that.
No, Qatar is responsible for much of the terrorist activity that has been perpetrated in Egypt and in other areas. And,
directly?
Oh,
Directly?
yes. Oh, yes. And
I mean, financing, arming?
There is sufficient evidence to financing and to supporting and to providing safe havens and shelter for many individuals who have...
By the government of Qatar?
Of course. And it is incumbent upon them to respond positively to what are not demands and not prerequisites, but what are legitimate concerns related to Qatar's discount and change of course related to its endorsement of radical ideologies.
But the U.S. seems to disagree with you. They say you need to make a gesture. Qatar has already committed itself to be more active. You don't agree?
The U.S. has committed at the highest level by President Trump when he attended the American Islamic Summit in Riyadh to full commitment to the war against terror, to eradicating terrorism, and to addressing the issues of financing, the issue of support.
But the deal they signed with the Americans, it's not enough for you.
It is a deal that has to be implemented and can only be evaluated by the two sides who signed it. The issues of concern that the four countries have raised are very pertinent, will have an impact if they are if the response of Qatar is positive towards them, to, I think, address many of the issues of lack of security in the region and the destabilizing effect of the expansion of terrorist organizations' activities.
Sameh Shoukry, thank you very much for coming on the France 24 set, and thank you for watching this edition of The Interview. Stay tuned for more news.